Coming up next on the Commissioner's Report, weather forecasters have a two-word warning for the upcoming winter season, El Nino. So what does that mean for us here in Polk County? Well, the potential for lots of rain and flooding. Commissioner John Hall will be here to tell us what the county has done, is continuing to do, and what you can do to keep your home safe and dry. And we'll take a closer look at the city of Lake Alfred. This little city is doing some pretty big things. Commissioner Ed Smith and Lake Alfred City Manager will be here as we discover the city of Lake Alfred. It's all straight ahead on the November edition of the Commissioner's Report. Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition, our November edition of the Commissioner's Report. I'm Mike Moore. Thank you for tuning us in. Commissioner John Hall is here. In just a few minutes, we're going to have Commissioner Ed Smith on the program, and we're going to talk about the city of Lake Alfred. It's the little city that could, and we'll tell you exactly what we're talking about in just a second. But Commissioner John Hall is here. He's the vice chairman, by the way, of the board. And Commissioner, it's always great to have you here.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
You know, as I'm looking at the weather forecast, and we love to look at the weather as we get ready to move into our winter seasons, the forecasters are telling us that El Nino is coming, and that more than likely means not just only cooler weather, but wetter weather, and that's easy for me to say. And beyond the fact that we may have a wetter winter, that does have some implications in terms of flooding here in Polk County, because we're right in the midst, really, of one of the wettest years we have seen in a long time. So flooding is always, that's a serious problem too.
Oh, absolutely. And we've been getting a lot of complaints about flooding in all different areas of the county. All of the commissioners have been responding as best we can. But you're correct. It is a wetter than usual summer. We have had more rainfall than we've had for probably the last century. And if the forecasts hold true, then we may break a 120-year record by the end of the year.
Some records shouldn't be broken, I guess. And again, a lot of people, that really, it doesn't necessarily impact them, but there is a significant portion of the population, because of the layout of the land, so to speak, that maybe they haven't seen rain like this in 20, 30 years. And now they're noticing they're being impacted. And that's kind of what the county has been. There's a variety of projects that I know the county's been working on for a number of years and is still doing. But like you like to say, in terms of the rain, there's nothing we can do about it. It's going to rain. It's
going to rain. There's nothing we can do about it. The problem that we are experiencing, and most of the, I won't call them complaints, I'll call them information sharing that we're getting from our citizens, is in areas that have been built back in the 1950s, 1960s, before we had land development codes and before we had building codes. So we've got some homes that are, and some streets and roads that are experiencing some flood conditions, and there's not a lot that we can do about it because the flood control infrastructure was not put in place back in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
Our population was much lower back then, and
That's
no one could foresee the point in time that we would have over 600,000 people in Polk County.
You know, when you think about over the lifetime of a home, if you live there for 20, 30 years, to think that you would possibly never be impacted by flooding is probably a little naive, unless you live at the very top of a hill. But flooding, you're going to be impacted at some point, and there are some places, like you said, maybe because of the cycle of the dry weather that we're getting out of, they've never experienced it before, but now we are.
Well, I actually just met with a group from my district in northwest Polk County, and they had never experienced it. They were here in 2004 in that subdivision that met with us, but the majority of them were not here in 1998. That's when we experienced our last big rain event. It was 1998. We had some rain in the hurricanes of 2004, but nothing like in 1998, where it covered pretty much all of the county.
Right. And you know, again, now if forecasters are correct, and sometimes they're not, and they sometimes often try to give us the worst case scenario, we should be prepared. That's the main. You've got to be prepared and got to be aware of where you live and what the potential weather that could be coming our way.
That's correct. You know, we have been fortunate over the last 3 weeks or so. We've had some dry weather. It's given us an opportunity to dry out. That just puts more storage space in the areas that hold water. So that has been a help, a bonus. But at any point in time, we could switch back the other way, and this El Nino event could start putting water in here, and we're going to be wet this winter.
Exactly. I want to give you a number in just a few minutes, so get ready. It's called the Citizens Information Line, and we will put that number up perhaps on the screen even as we're talking here. And Commissioner Hall would encourage you to call if there's flooding in your neighborhoods, because oftentimes if they don't call, there's no way the county's going to know.
Right, and in some instances there are some things that we can do. There may be some drainage structures that have been clogged with debris that has fallen in ditches.
Right.
There's some things that we could do as far as cleaning it out and helping the water flow. In some instances there's nothing we can do because all of the water conveyance systems are working to their capacity and there's no place for the water to go.
Exactly. Sometimes when it comes that fast, it just takes a little while. It may be 12 hours, and it's gone the next day, but in those 12 hours, it can cause problems for people. You mentioned those getting the debris out. The county has a really cool looking, I don't know if the nickname is called the spider machine, or that really is what it is, but it is pretty cool.
Yes, it is called a spider, and actually every one of the wheels will articulate by themselves, and it can actually climb down ditch banks and get into ditch bottoms to clean that debris out. It's really a great machine for keeping ditches open and maintained.
That's got to be a cool job. I operate the spider here in Polk County. A lot of things, we were talking about some of the things the county has done. There's been a number of things you can do, whether it's drainage or pumping systems, or even in some cases home buyouts. I thought maybe we could talk about some examples of things that have already been done. We have some photos of some things, and we have up here in the Peace River Estates and off Lake Seward some examples of where you actually had to come in and, I guess with FEMA's help, and purchase some properties.
Right. FEMA has mitigation monies, and especially in flood-prone areas. Once we had found out that the area is prone to flooding, such as these two areas, there's no reason to let the water subside and let the homes then be remodeled, because the next major rain event or flood event, they're just going to be destroyed again.
Right.
So we applied for and were granted FEMA mitigation monies, and we bought some homes. I think it was 3 around Lake Seward, and Peace River Estates, I think there was 11 or 12 homes we actually purchased and demolished and made that area just a flood basin, so that when the waters come back, it doesn't impact anything.
And you know what? You're so glad that people do that, because you don't want to be the person that goes in there and buys and inherits that kind of a problem. Right. Another example is Saddlebag Lake, and I guess this is some drainage. I guess this isn't a pumping station, drainage, I guess.
Well, when Saddlebag Lake flooded, the Saddlebag Resort, we did have to pump it initially. Okay. And we set up pumps out there. We pumped it, and then we actually did a gravity outfall from Saddlebag Lake. I think it's into Lake Thomas, so that we do not have to experience this again, and the residents out here do not have to experience this, because they were all displaced. Everyone was gone. Wow.
And it's interesting, all these places we're going to mention, you've actually kind of been to all these places during these flooding times to witness this firsthand. So
yes, actually, the Peace River Estates, the Lake Seward, the Saddlebag Lake, all these are photos from 2004 when the hurricanes came through here. Okay. And when the flooding took place, it was part of my staff in the building division. And we had 2 counties that were helping us, Pasco and Hillsborough, sent their staffs over, and it was those staffs that did the damage inspections, you know. So that's why we were out there in all these places to do damage assessments.
Now, Lake Belle is one of those examples where you literally had to put a pumping station in, so I guess gravity alone is not going to work in this particular case. So this is obviously a little more extensive and costly, but it's something that had to be done.
Absolutely. It is, it's a basin. there was no place to gravity flow this out and into. And in a severe flooding event, the roadway would actually flood there, and the cul-de-sac area, the little island out there at the end of this peninsula, it became an island at the end of the peninsula because the lake would actually come up and connect across the roadway. So yes, it was a bad situation. It now has been taken care of with the pumping station.
Wow, that's very helpful. Now we're going to run out of time. There's a lot we can talk about. There's some other drainage improvements that are important. I mean, you know, neighborhoods, people know when they live there when the water doesn't drain, and so these kind of projects, wherever they are always helpful, getting rid of that water as quickly as possible.
Oh, absolutely. When you have a flooding situation and you can put in an under drain system, which is what Red Hawk drainage improvements entails, it is excellent for moving that water out of there. You don't see it. It's not an open ditch. It's not a true culvert system, but it's an under drain system that uses perforated pipe and moves the water.
You know, again, that's funny you mentioned that. There's a lot of things sometimes that we don't see and you may not be aware of that's already have been done to help alleviate the problem. Village park drainage is kind of another example of that. It's out of sight, hopefully then out of mind when it works. But when the flooding comes in there, then you're very much on your mind. So these are the kind of projects that are costly, but they're important.
Yes, they are. And you're right. It's out of sight, out of mind, and you don't think about it until it does not work. And this is what I was talking about when the show started. Some of the subdivisions that were built back in the 50s and 60s, the culverts that were put into those systems now are inadequate because of all the buildup around those initial subdivisions. They just can't carry the water flow, and especially when you have a real heavy rainfall in a short period of time. So we're looking at all of our systems to see what it can be done.
And you know, it's interesting, there are limitations of what you can do, especially when you're dealing with surrounding counties. You can't just go pumping all your water into another county. There are certain limitations, and you know, they don't want all that water. It's in your, you know, so sometimes you're limited to how fast you can get rid of the water.
Actually, it's not just the surrounding counties, but that's an excellent point. It's our water management district. They have us maintain our lakes at certain levels,
right.
And Lake Lowry is an excellent example. We do have outfalls on Lake Lowry, but it has to be maintained at a certain level. The county to the north of us there, Lake County, we can't just let all of that water go because it actually sheet flows into Lake County and can flood them. So yeah, there's excellent points.
Yeah, a couple of phone numbers again I want to give you. I mentioned already the Citizens Information Line, 863-401-2234. This is where you can report some, if you have some flooding in your area. You can also find out about sandbag locations. And of course, visit the county's website, polk-county.net. You can click on the little sandbag icon, and it'll tell you all that is information as well. And perhaps as we run out of time here, Commissioner, you know, if people want to know about the floodplain, they can contact the county for that as well, and also visit that on the website. Let them kind of let you know exactly where we are seeing the problem areas, so to speak. And
anyone that's thinking about buying a piece of property, I would encourage them to go to the website, take a look at our floodplain maps. Come into the building division where we have land development senior specialists down there to talk about our flood maps, and you can see where we're prone to flooding in Polk County.
Well, Commissioner, I hope El Nino is an El minor thing.
Nino.
Nino. There you go. I like that. El Nino. But we have to be prepared either way. So, Commissioner, I thank you for coming on. Appreciate it, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you, sir. It's
right.
been a pleasure.
We're going to take a break, but when we come back, Commissioner Ed Smith is going to be here, and we're going to change directions from flooding to talk about Lake Alfred, the little city that is, and we'll tell you all about what they're doing right after this.
All right, I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
You were supposed to make a right, but you made a left. And it's okay, you found your way. On a personal note, as I was counseling the two of you,
And welcome back to the Commissioner's Report as we get ready for the second half of the program. I also want to say a thank you note to Jay Jarvis, who gave us those all those maps and some of the pictures there of the flooding. And also I mentioned the Transportation Division. They changed their name. He is now part of the Roads and Drainage Division. That just started, I guess, this fiscal year. So anyway, Jay Jarvis, thank you so much for that. We're going to change directions here. We're going to go from some flooding. We're going to talk about no flooding. It's all about Lake Alfred, the city of Lake Alfred, and one of the jewel cities there in your district. Commissioner Ed Smith is here. Commissioner, it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to spotlight Lake Alfred. It's as I said, one of the hidden jewels, I think, probably of Polk County, and we want to showcase it a little bit today.
Well, you know a little something about Lake Alfred. You served as their mayor 2 terms, a vice mayor 1 term, been on the city commission, so this will be a great opportunity. You know this city, and Ryan Leavengood. Leavengood, I'm sorry, Ryan. Ryan Leavengood, he is the city manager. He's been there since, I guess, March of 2012. So
yep, coming on 4 years here.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does.
Well, let's quickly talk about Lake Alfred. Lake Alfred, a lot of people, again, I'm always amazed, Commissioner, how sometimes people in the South County don't know anything about the North and vice versa. They may think there's nothing going on except maybe a sleepy town up there in Lake Alfred, but it is a nice sleepy town, but there's things going on there.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got a lot going on, and we're gonna show some of that today and talk about it.
You know, one of the things we want to talk about in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about the UF Citrus Research and Education Center, which is there almost for 100 years. And also, you have a CRA just really developing your master downtown plan and a new library, and you're very independent. We want to talk about that as well. You have your own fire department and police department. But one of the maybe hidden jewels, it's about history and preserving your history, is the Mackay Gardens Lakeside Preserve. Over almost 100 years, Commissioner. I know this is one of those areas that I think you're so proud that they've kept this, and it's a jewel.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, you know, it's named after a Scottish gentleman whose name was Mackay, of course, and not McKay. It is Mackay. And he bought it as an orange grove and built a kind of a retreat, if you will, there, and with a lot of beautiful facilities, and it's on a beautiful lake, and we're just really proud of that. And of course now the area there is owned by the city of Lake Alfred.
Right.
And it's a wonderful venue. So I'm sure that the city manager here is going to talk about that a little bit. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, before we do that, I had a chance earlier today to talk with the Vice Mayor, Nancy Daley, who was at the Mackay Preserve, and shared some of the input and thoughts about some of the preservation and renovations that are currently going on. Nancy, I appreciate you talking with me this morning. So tell me a little bit about some of the renovations that are getting ready to take place there at the Mackay Preserve.
Well, we are working on some of the outdoor renovations where we have master gardeners that come every week, and they're volunteers, and they are working on the gardens and preserving some of the plants. We are also getting ready to do renovations on the upstairs of the home to bring it back to what it used to be back in the early 20s. We're going to be preserving some of the rooms. Some of them, there was some damage, of course, over the years that we're going to be repairing, but we're also going to make some definite improvements.
Now, I understand the building, the house itself is nearly 100 years old.
Yes, it was built in between 1915 and 1916, and it was a kit home that was brought down on the railroad. It's similar to a craftsman-style home. It's one of the largest of its kind this far south, and there's about 7,000 square feet, It has either 6 bathrooms and 7 fireplaces or vice versa, but it's just a really beautiful home, and it's a perfect place for a wedding, a community event, or a business meeting.
You mentioned weddings, and I see a gazebo over your shoulder. That really is such a beautiful spot. So are weddings something that you're seeing more and more of as people become aware of the preserve?
Oh yes, absolutely. The weddings are being booked out far in advance these days. The wedding arbor is a very popular place to get married. There's also room for a big tent in case you want to have a wedding that's bigger than the house can accommodate. And people have also gotten married in the house. There's a big sweeping staircase where the bride can come down and meet her groom.
The gardens and the preserve are a big piece of history for the city of Lake Alfred. And when I look at the name, it looks like McKay, but I'm told it's Mackay. So why is it so important to preserve this unique history?
Well, the Mackay family was very instrumental in agriculture in the state of Florida. They owned the Texas Land and Cattle Company, and they owned a lot of property around Lake Alfred. So they were one of the pioneer families of agriculture in Polk County. That's one of the reasons that the property is significant. But it's also just a beautiful place to come and reflect on nature.
You mentioned people going there to reflect on nature, but a lot of people may think, I don't need to see an old house, I've seen it before. And if they're not having a wedding either, so what's the other big drawing point? Why else should people come out and visit the Mackay Gardens and Lakeside Preserve?
Well, there's educational programs, there's nature tours, which are very popular. There's also a great workshop, a gardening workshop that we have every first Thursday of every month. So there's a lot of activities here, and families come out and enjoy the property. We also have a lot of engagement photos and high school photos, and people come out and take pictures. There's a lot of birds here that you don't see everywhere in Polk County. The birders come out, and we've got nearby eagle's nest. You see osprey and eagles, as well as different species of woodpecker, and lots of different things to see that you don't see everywhere else.
Well, Nancy, I appreciate you coming out and talking with us this morning. And I wish you the very best with the project as you continue to promote the beautiful city of Lake Alfred.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. We really enjoy our property here, and we hope that people can see it and come out and enjoy it for years to come.
Again, my thanks to Nancy Daley, the Vice Mayor, very much involved with the Mackay Preserve there. Now, Ryan, let me ask you a question. You know, she mentioned weddings and people coming there. I imagine tourism is a big part of that, trying to draw people maybe out of the area to come to visit this area.
Yeah, as the commissioner said, you know, it's one of the hidden jewels in Lake Alfred, and so part of the challenge is just promoting it and building that awareness. You know, oftentimes we'll hear about Bach Tower or the Circle B, but you know, we've got the Mackay Preserve in Lake Alfred, so that's something that we've pushed the last several years. And you know, even when we go back to the budget, you know, we've located some staff down there to where there's a presence throughout the week, and we're booked out until April now just for weddings. So even revenue-wise, we've probably quadrupled our wedding revenue that we were receiving there. We've got a very, very active volunteer group down there. Can't speak enough about them. You know, as a smaller city, we don't necessarily have all the manpower to do everything, you know, within the payroll system. So again, we've got a very active volunteer group that they'll give nature walks and tours and help maintain the grounds. So it really is a team effort there with the community, the commission, and the staff. And again, it's one of those jewels of Lake Alfred and of Polk County.
Yeah, and of course, if they're there visiting, then maybe they need to go out and have some lunch and visit some of the other nice little restaurants. We were talking about that before the show, some of the nice restaurants that are there in Lake Alfred that you certainly need to check out. Commissioner, I kind of want to change directions, but talk about 100 years. There's another completely different facility there in Lake Alfred that's doing amazing, great work, the University of Florida Citrus Research and Education Center. It's hard to believe, almost 100 years they've been there.
Absolutely. Well, you know, probably the most important industry to the state of Florida is the citrus industry. And the research that goes on there supports the Florida citrus industry. Of course, the big issue right now, as you know, is citrus greening that is posing a tremendous threat to the citrus industry. And so a lot of the research in combating that is going on right there in Lake Alfred. Matter of fact, you know, we have scientists that are living and working there at that center from all over the world. And so it is an extremely important area. And the number of PhDs out there, I don't know, but an awful lot of them out there. And it is really high-level work that's going on. And so we're very fortunate to have that located in Lake Alfred.
Right. And I was looking at some stats. Florida provides 75% of the nation's orange juice. So not just for Polk County. This is important nationwide, and some amazing work there that they're doing. Hopefully, and I don't know all the things, I'm not a scientist, I know they're making strides to finding a cure for this citrus greening, which is devastating.
Well, absolutely, and in all directions. They're trying to develop stronger, more resistant rootstocks and strains. They're looking at different kinds of pesticides and chemical additives and things they can put in the soil. Every possible way of really combating this threat to the Florida citrus industry, and I think we're making big strides,
right.
but it's not easy. This is a very tough problem.
Well, one day a cure is going to be announced, and it's going to come from the city of Lake Alfred. So that's going to be nice to hear, and nice for you guys to shine on that in that spotlight. Let me kind of change directions again. There's a lot we want to touch on in the short amount of time we have. I mentioned the CRA and your downtown plans, and you've got a lot going on, and we're running out of time. But I want you to tell us some of the high points here. What's going on downtown Lake Alfred?
Well, just want to first of all thank Commissioner Smith for his support. You know, the county CRA, to create a community redevelopment agency, you've got to go through and get the blessing of the county and work with them. So my appreciation to Ed and most certainly the entire county commission for working with us on that. A community redevelopment agency, again, it's really just a mechanism to concentrate tax dollars to reinvest it into the community. We've made some good strides already initially. It's only the first year, so you got to build up your budget slowly. But if you've driven through Lake Alfred recently, you'll probably notice there's something missing. When you drive through the middle of town, the old Buchanan building, which is a massive white structure there in the middle of our downtown that the city actually acquired by swapping property with the University of Florida and the IFAS there. We had some excess spray field property that we didn't need. They had some commercial property that they didn't need, so we partnered with them and swapped properties. They got more acreage in order to grow more specimens, as the commissioner had suggested, to help with their research efforts. And the city got a key commercial property in downtown Lake Alfred to try to promote economic redevelopment and to market it. So that ties back directly with the CRA. If we get new construction there, those will generate additional tax dollars, which we can then reinvest into the community further. Also, too, if you'll drive through Lake Alfred and come Christmas time, we've invested in some new Christmas decorations, so Lake Alfred will be ready to go for the holidays if you're driving through town. And then also, too, coming online this fall, we've implemented, as a part of our downtown master plan and our branding effort, we've come up with a wayfinding signage program, which really kind of has the characteristic Lake Alfred green and gold. And so that's there to help get people where they need to go in the downtown, but also, again, just to let people know that they've arrived in downtown Lake Alfred, and also to help our business community help those motorists find those different business locations. So we've got quite a bit going on in Lake Alfred. You know, every year we always kind of joke that we're a small city, but we've got a lot going on and a high number of positive things that we're working on.
It made me think of the story, The Little Engine That Could, the little city that is, and that Lake Alfred's doing some great work.
You know, we moved, my wife and I, to Lake Alfred in 1994, and at that time our youngest son was in the 7th grade, and I think one of the drivers there was Lake Alfred is just a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to raise kids. He could get on his bicycle and go all over town. He could go swimming. He could go fishing. The traffic was almost non-existent in the quieter parts of town, which is back where we lived. And I think Lake Alfred is being discovered, of course.
Right.
But it's a wonderful place to live and a wonderful place for kids to grow up.
And it's got this long history that you need to check out. It's funny, I was looking at some of the names. At one point, Fargo, Chubb, Bartow Junction. I think about over 100 years ago, they finally decided Lake Alfred, named after one of the early settlers. Well, the time has quickly gone by, gentlemen. I appreciate, Ryan, thank you for coming in and sharing some of the good news here, of course. And Commissioner, I know you're excited about promoting the cities in your district. And I guess the next time you come back, we're going to take a look at Polk City. How's that sound?
Absolutely. Downtown Polk City.
There you go. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Commissioner, for being here.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you so much for joining us. And we'll catch you next time for another edition of the Commissioner's Report.